to the Efed podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real. I'm your host, Mikey Unlikely, and I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Atomic Dropcast Network.
And we're back, episode 64 of the Efed podcast. So excited you could join us here today. I am Mikey Unlikely, the host with the most, that's the most overused intro in podcasting history. I'm joined by Brian, producer and co-host of the Efed podcast. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing exceptional. How about you, sir?
Exceptional. I like that. I am exceptional as well. We are here, tuned in, and ready for another episode of the Efed podcast, episode 64.
Doesn't really play.
I was a big N64 guy. What about you, Brian?
I loved N64. To this day, still have two of them.
Oh, I'm going to cop one of those off of you real quick.
Hey.
So nobody else ask Brian about that 64. It's coming my way. So, guys, today on the show, we got Darin. He's the handler of, you guessed it, Darin Zion / Darin Matthews. He's over at High Octane Wrestling and Missouri Valley Wrestling. We're going to talk to him today about his time as an independent ring announcer, as well as his recent online rivalry with one Matt Hardy.
Oh, okay. Intrigue.
The broken one. It all started when, well, you know what? We'll get into it on the interview.
We'll get there.
That's a throwback. Today on the Spotlight segment, we've got Oath Pro Wrestling. We interviewed the Fed head all the way back on episode 11 of the Efed podcast. Today, we're going to sponsor him on the Spotlight, and I'm excited to talk about him once again, Brian.
100% love a good angle Fed. You love to see it, Christy.
You'd love to see it, Christy. Oath Pro Wrestling back on the podcast. Question of the week, we're going to talk e-wrestling managers. I'm excited, too excited. Brian, let's get into it right now as far as you and I are concerned. What are your thoughts on the question of the week? It is thoughts on e-wrestling managers. Useful, obsolete, or essential?
Mainstream wrestling seems to think they are obsolete, but I don't think, well, I don't want to say they, because I don't watch that shit. I don't know.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
WWE anyway.
Yeah, they don't seem to really use them anymore. And you don't want to go manager crazy, but they're incredibly useful. There's been some great mouthpieces, guys who in regular wrestling who just couldn't wrestle, but could talk. And then obviously you're going to have the reverse. Why not put them two together? And I think obviously anything that is useful and works well on the real thing is going to obviously work well in e-vetting.
That's exactly right. I kind of feel the same way. Of course, managers can be useful. I wouldn't say they're essential. It's going to depend on your character. If your character is a great talker, then you don't really need a manager. If you have a character who's not a great talker, but they're great in the ring, then maybe the manager is just suited for you. So it depends on where you're at, how you write, whether it's angle, role play, and the fit of your character.
100%.
The cut of your jib, as they say, Brian.
Well, and for me, maybe too, and I don't know. For me, it almost seems like heels are better with managers than faces.
Very well could be.
I don't see many faces with managers.
No, you're exactly right, unless it's more of the female valet variety.
Very true, which you don't see that nearly as often anymore.
No, because now all the valets are wrestlers, which is great. Women's wrestling has come a long way, and we're going to talk about that even in Darin Zion's interview here on the show, because in the Fed that he runs with, they have a big female division. I believe one of them just got signed to the WWE.
Very nice.
So, all right, guys, we're going to get into it. We're going to hear your answers on the EFED podcast question of the week coming up. Of course, if you want to find the EFED podcast on Twitter, you can do so at the EFED podcast. You can find us over on Facebook at the EFED podcast. Of course, on YouTube, just search the EFED podcast. We're going to be the first thing that shows up. Over on Patreon, if you want to support the show, we would greatly appreciate it at patreon.com/EFED podcast.
And of course, don't forget, efedpodcast.com.
efedpodcast.com, our very own website where you can catch each and every episode as well as information about the podcast. And we can never forget our other business venture, EWTs, efedtees.com. If you want some custom gear, you know what? We got a commercial coming up. Here's a word from our sponsors.
The Efed podcast is a totally free podcast that drops each and every single week for your e-wrestling ears on a multitude of apps. If you'd like to support the show, however, the best way to do so is over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support both Brian and myself as we crank out more e-wrestling content with perks such as early releases and special Discord designations. And if that's not enough EW action for you, jump up to the $10 a month tier and you can get a free EWT's t-shirt design, early and ad-free editions of the show, as well as access to our monthly Q&As, bad graps, and more. And if you'd like to be a sponsor on the show and get your ad played, the best way to do that is the sponsor level on Patreon with all of the previous perks plus weekly commercials on the show. Check it out over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. We greatly appreciate your consideration.
Occupy Pro Wrestling, putting the smart back into smart mark since 2012, with a community on Discord and message boards, merchandise, a weekly vodcast on Twitch, and much more. Check out everything from us and our site partners at occupyprowrestling.com.
Efed Tees, the #1 source for Efed merchandise, offering custom merchandise made for your wrestler, tag team, stable, or Efed. Whether you want a high-quality t-shirt, face mask, hoodie, hat, it doesn't matter. We can help you out over at efedtees.com. Do you have a custom logo for your wrestler? Awesome. We're going to slap it on a shirt and help you out real fast. If not, no problem at all. We have a custom design service too. You can work with a graphic artist to get the perfect design made for your character. Go on over to EWTees.com and click on Want a Shirt to get your shirt started. EFedTees.com.
Defiance, an angle fed boasting 8 years of continuous fantasy wrestling. Defiance offers opportunities for original characters, micros, a standalone website utilizing Backstage 3 script, and a forum hosted on the long-running FWrestling.com, as well as a roster full of some of the most experienced writers in the game. Come see for yourself at DefianceWrestling.com. That's DefianceWrestling.com.
All right, guys, it's time for the Efed Podcast Spotlight segment. This is a segment where we highlight a Fed that's out there, tell you a little bit about them, and see if it would be a good fit for you to check them out. Today on the show, it's Oath Pro Wrestling. It's a throwback to episode 11 when we had the Fed head on the show to talk about his Fed. We're going to tell you a little bit about them again here today.
Indeed. Seems like forever ago, episode 11, but here we are, episode 64. And remind the people, how does this Fed Oath Pro Wrestling operate?
So Oath Pro Wrestling is essentially an angle Fed. They encourage their roster members to do show submissions with strategies and segments to get more involved. The focus is on long-term storytelling. And obviously they are an angle Fed.
Very nice. Very nice. How often are we looking at for shows and pay-per-views?
They're a bi-weekly Fed, so they have shows every 2 weeks. That way it's a nice, easy schedule to keep up with.
There you go.
They have a go ahead, Brian.
No, there you go. Bi-weekly is a great pace for Angle Fed, in my opinion.
Absolutely. That's the way we do things over at Defiance. So Livewire is their ECW-esque show for new roster members. Matches are no DQ, and it airs on Wednesday nights. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Ooh.
Conviction is their primary program. It airs on Sunday nights and follows a more conventional rules setup. Bi-monthly, they have a special Conviction, which serves as a mini pay-per-view.
Mini pay-per-view.
Oh, internet pay-per-view. Yes, that is correct. So, and then they have their actual internet pay-per-views bi-monthly, and they're preceded by Catalyst, which is the kickoff show, and serves as a special event for those who are not booked on the pay-per-view itself. Nice way to include everyone on the roster.
Great name for a pre-pay-per-view show as well.
There you go.
So we always talk about the all-important rules and word limits. What are we looking at?
So over in Oath, they want people to work together to come up with cool storylines. They try to limit the segments to about 1,000 words, but it's not a concrete rule. So there is some leeway there. Basically, they just don't want the longest show in the universe, and just have some fun, work some segments with people, and do some world building.
Completely understandable. You want it to be good, but it's got to be digestible. also.
Absolutely.
So
we learned that recently too.
Yes, very much so. So active championships.
Yes, the top title over in Oath is the World Championship, obviously the biggest prize in Oath. It is contested among the best wrestlers that they have to offer. They also have the Tag Team Championships, of course, top prize for tandems over in Oath. Tag team titles are considered just a notch below the world titles in terms of prestige. As a tag team handler myself, I love to hear that.
Yeah, tag team wrestling doesn't quite get treated like it should, and that's good to see.
Absolutely. Intrepid Championship is the one that takes a particular type of competitor to win and defend, as conviction defenses are contested under 15-minute time limits, and iPay-per-views get 20 minutes. If the match does not end before the time limit, the champion retains. However, the title does change hands by pinfall, submission, referee stoppage, DQ, or countout, unless another stipulation is in play.
Oh, wow. A little bit like a TV title with some extras sprinkled on
it. There you go. They also have the Tabula Rasa Championship, which is a clean slate title. Basically, whoever wins this title gets to decide the match stipulation on how they defend it.
Oh.
This could be anything. It could even be augment the type of championship that it actually is.
Wow.
They also have the Live Wire Championship, which is their version of the television title, in the fact that it is defended each and every week on TV, whether it's Live Wire or Catalyst.
Oh wow, that's quite the workload for whoever is toting around that title.
No doubt. I imagine a long stretch of that title is hard to obtain.
Definitely. So, top 10 wrestlers in no particular order. Just a little brief glimpse at the roster.
They've got Locke Helms,
James Edwards,
Leah Aguero,
Stephanie Matsuda,
Minoru Tanahashi,
El Diablo Blanco,
Ryan Terror,
Matt Shields,
Callie Resnick,
Casey Cash.
There you have it, a little glimpse of the roster over at Oath Pro Wrestling. Of course, you can find Oath on Twitter at Oath Pro Wrestle. And again, you can find them online, oathprowrestling.wixsite.com/home.
.com/home.
And right now, Brian, they've got a strong roster of about 30 roster members.
That is a healthy roster. Congratulations on that.
That's right. We'd love to see another great Angle Fed out there, guys. Check out Oath Pro Wrestling. Of course, they set out to tell great stories and not take themselves too seriously. They just want to have a good time, tell good stories, and have a nice community with other handlers. Check them out at Oath Pro Wrestle on Twitter, or again online, oathprowrestling.wixsite.com/home.
.com/home.
Hey, this is Roland, handler of Tyler and Connor Fuse, the Fuse Brothers, and you're listening to the Efed Podcast.
Welcome back to the Efed Podcast Question of the Week segment. This week's question of the week here on episode 64. What are your thoughts on e-wrestling managers? Are they useful? Obsolete? You got Brian and I's answers at the top of the show, and now it's time to hear from you guys.
Indeed, and first up is Ruzilla at the Ruzy One.
The Ruzy One has the best manager in Babyface Badly. Managers give the ability of different perspective. I think, dependent on character, they can be essential.
No doubt. I wonder if that's Babyface Bradley, and he missed an R.
Could be.
Up next, the Memphis Mouthpiece, Tommy Love at Memphis Tommy.
Managers can become legends if used right, or can be used simply as someone to bounce dialogue off of. There are so many roles a manager can take on the suit, the wrestler, and their needs. I have brought in Tommy, his son Buddy, his daughter Bunny, and now his ex-wife Maria. I think it's well said in the beginning, managers can be used as someone just to bounce dialogue off of. I think when I was early in e-wrestling, before I was a tag team wrestler, that's what I used them for. It's just someone to talk to in role plays.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just so you can have that dialogue rather than always being married to just yelling at the camera.
Absolutely.
So continuing on Twitter, up next is Sasha Sky Nash at Sexy Sasha Sky.
Not at all.
Quick and to the point.
She has no interest in managers.
Up next, Sam Titanus Hamilton at Titanus Sam.
They are absolutely helpful. I started with just having Sam's first husband, Joseph, be her only manager, but I went to the handler of Memphis Tommy, and we agreed to have him be Sam's co-manager. It's been so much more fun doing promos as of late, and super helpful, in my opinion.
Well, there you go. Up next, Xavier Reed at Xavier Reed.
I love having an e-wrestling manager, but I might have the best one out there in Memphis Tommy. This guy's everywhere. I feel like he's done a great job establishing Tommy Love into more than your run-of-the-mill manager and into one of the great wrestling personalities in the EWC.
Very nice. Memphis Tommy is out here putting in work.
I guess all of his clients are answering too.
Yeah, he's got a whole dangerous alliance going on. All right, up next, still on Twitter, we have Azarine Vebens at That's Azzy Vebens.
E-wrestling managers add a different dimension to storytelling. You have another avenue for building feuds, and they can assist those who may not have the gift of gab. Unlike Azarine Vebens.
Oh, very precise. Still on Twitter, up next, Abigail Lindsay. She is at Abigail Lindsay _.
Useful. I have used various manager characters over time. They can be a huge asset.
Indeed, they can.
That's right.
E-Wrestling Guys is up next, and he is at E-Wrestling Guys.
Absolutely, yes. A manager can add another dimension to a character if done right.
Seems like there's a bit of a consensus.
Yeah, and most people still appreciate the managers in e-wrestling, which is good. That's what I was curious to hear.
Definitely. So here up next, we have Bert Cocaine at Kane Insane.
Speaking as the best manager in e-wrestling, I am so goddamn essential, I've started skipping Starbucks lines and getting thanked with a fistful of free coffee. But I also fucking breathe this gimmick.
I mean, best manager, at this point, I think Memphis Tommy might give you a run for your money.
There you go.
At least in client load, right?
I'm sure we're going to hear about it on Twitter.
Hey, there you go. Up next, Paco, the Drinking Time Bomb Perez at ODJ 7 Deadly Sins.
100% useful. They can add dimension, depth, and even backstory to your characters.
Indeed, they can. Last but not least on Twitter, Malaya Diosa at Malaya Diosa.
Of course, they are great. Some gimmicks shouldn't speak for starters. They can help keep face characters strong in a loss as well. There you go. Different perspective. There you go with the face manager perspective.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we talk about the top of the show. You don't see too much of that, but there is a way to do it, obviously. So jumping over from the Twitter to the Discord. And of course, if you're not on the Discord and you're listening to this, you should definitely check it out. On Discord, up first is Ron Hall, Highlander 4H.
He says they are useful, Brian.
Well, thank you, Ron Hall.
Ron Hall is the manager of nothing.
the manager of mops.
The manager of Ron Hall's Super Mask Emporium brick and mortar store.
If you pass the Panera Bread, you've gone too far. Up next on the Discord is Cat Pasadity.
Our good friend Joe. He complained we didn't put him over enough on the last episode, Brian.
Oh, did he now?
As useful as any other storytelling device in wrestling, why not use them from time to time? Because I don't want to, Joe.
I think it's funny you complained we didn't put him over enough. There was actually a joke in that episode about firing him that I cut out.
See?
Because it was a running gag that just didn't play.
Because it wasn't really a joke.
Oh, maybe. Speaking of a man we would never fire, up next on Discord, we got Warren MDG, Modern Day Gladiators. Make sure you check it out.
When writing, it gives you someone to play off of. It can also protect your babyface in losses to keep the mystique, or can give the heel another way to cheat. Defiance has quite a few, even one setting up a stable in the WWE 80s style.
Ho-ho.
I like it. Warren is a veteran of the game. Of course, he knows all the avenues of using managers.
Indeed, a veteran of the game, a veteran of games, board games, check his out, Modern Day Gladiators. Up next, we've got Meg, 5bw.org.
.org. If they are used right, then there's no problem. However, if they're used as jokes, that's a problem.
And we don't want problems.
If you got a problem with managers, you got a problem with Meg. That's what it comes down to.
If you got a problem, yo, she'll solve it. .org. Up next, The Masked Guy.
As someone who frequently uses managers, I definitely feel they have a place in e-fetting.
Hot take.
Hot take. Careful with that controversial way of looking at things.
Yeah, let's not rub anyone the wrong way. Speaking of rubbing people the wrong way, up next, Seth is Burns.
Oh, it does burn. I'm running one right now that is an absolute blast. They definitely have a place if used right.
They definitely do. And up next, the man to be interviewed on this particular episode you are currently listening to, Darin Zion.
Useful for sure. As concise as Ron Hall.
Yeah, I hope he has a little more to add in the interview section. And last but not least on the Discord, our old friend from TW Combat, John Thompson.
I had one when I was doing a roleplay fed. His name was Frankie Renzoli. It's nice to have extra characters for your stories. I find it kind of hard to fit him in with this new fed, the UWL.
So again, it's right place, right time. But it seems like there's a general consensus, other than, a few who disagree, that managers are still very relevant, very useful. Maybe not essential.
They still have a place in this hobby, Brian.
Some do, and some don't. And if you know of anyone who you feel has no place in this hobby, I highly suggest you head on over to EWTs.com and gift them our wonderful No Place in This Hobby t-shirt.
That's right. Send them a t-shirt that says No Place in This Hobby and let them know how you really feel.
There you go.
All right, guys, thanks for answering this week's EFED podcast question of the week. Of course, you can find it pinned to the top of the profile over on Twitter and also in the Discord in its own channel if you'd like to answer there with more characters. Check it out, the EFED podcast question of the week. Drop your answer on the comments and you'll be featured here on the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the EFED podcast interview series. Today, I'm joined on the show by another handler who I currently handle an Efed with. It's Darin, the handler of Darin Matthews, otherwise known as Darin Zion. He's a handler over in HO Wrestling, that's High Octane Wrestling, as well as MVW Heartland on Twitter, and that is Missouri Valley Wrestling. Darin, how you doing today, buddy?
Mikey, I am doing fantastic. How about yourself?
I am doing very well. Glad to have you on the show and excited to talk to you.
Dude, I'm excited about this podcast. I've been waiting for 6 months now?
It's a long waiting list, and I apologize for that. People jumped on early and often.
Dude, I'm not mad about that. I've just been waiting in anticipation, my friend.
That's right. So, no, I'm having a great night. I'm having a drink, and I believe you are as well.
Yep, I've got a left-handed brewing company, peanut butter milk stout.
Nice. There you go. Left-handed brewing. Yeah. Very good. I am drinking margaritas.
Ooh, Taco Tuesday.
You got it. So, buddy, thanks for joining us on the show today. And before we get started, a little fact about you. You are a ring announcer as well.
Yes, I am a ring announcer. In fact, I do a lot of ring announcing when the pandemic's not going on out of a promotion called Prairie Championship Wrestling out of Hutchinson, Kansas. It is a federation lumped up with a lot of other indie startups in Kansas. They formed an alliance called the Kansas Wrestling Alliance. It's been a blast. They've been, I'd say they're the second best promotion out in these parts out of the Wichita, Salina, Hutchinson area. It's a big old conglomeration of cities that kind of feed into one another out here. It's been a great experience.
That's pretty cool. And as a wrestling fan, it's got to be cool to step in the ring and get to do something, be part of the show.
It's been a dream of mine. I did not ever expect to be a part of the business itself outside of e-fetting, but I had quite an interesting story with that. I know somebody asked that question. We'll dive more into that experience a little bit later.
See, you must be an experienced podcaster because you already know how to save the good stuff for later.
I'm an experienced entertainer, to say the least. I know how to be around crowds and how to energize stuff. I literally know how to get my crowd from just sounding like, yay, I'm here, woohoo, and they're just excited and they try to blow the roof off.
Well, good. We're going to get excited here on the show today, too.
Yes.
So let's hear a little bit of the ring introduction.
Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest is scheduled for one fall. Introducing first from Hollywood, California, weighing in at 230 pounds, he is the world's greatest sports entertainer, Mikey Unlikely.
Well, now I'm hype. I'm ready to go.
I know, right?
Hit the music. All right.
Copyright doesn't allow us to do that, unfortunately.
That's about right. Well, fortunately for me, my theme song is performed and owned by the producer of the show.
That is awesome.
There we go. So, no, hey, buddy, let's dive into you. Talk to me about how you became a fan of professional wrestling.
It was funny because I was talking about this in one of my wrestling groups today. I used to play a lot of video games. I'm a big nerd outside of Efeding. And my first introduction to wrestling wasn't watching something on TV. I actually happened to get introduced by a video game, a very famous video game, WCW Revenge. My cousins.
Very good game.
Yes, it was one of my favorite games growing up, but let's just be honest, No Mercy eclipsed it by tenfold.
No Mercy is the bar forever.
Oh, definitely, man. So I got playing with that, and I'm just like, man, this is a fun fighting game. I didn't even know wrestling really existed outside of video games until I'm at my friend's house in the pool. He had it on, and I happened to catch the first Nitro that Bret Hart had returned after the whole Owen Hart incident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. It's a very sad night, but my introduction to wrestling was through Bret Hart and Chris Benoit's tribute match to Owen Hart. I have a lot of pride in that. Not necessarily that I absolutely love what Chris Benoit did after the fact, but It was probably one of the better technical matches that you could actually get yourself into. And that story, even though, it was sad and everybody knew the news behind it, just seeing those wrestlers go out and put their all into it really sucked me in to the sport.
And it was probably the best Bret Hart WCW match that he had.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of conflict as you talk about it later years, but a lot of it was just watching just the psychological and technical stuff. It wasn't just me being excited to watch two grown men beat the crap out of one another. I loved getting into the story elements, like some of those smaller things like, oh, could Bret Hart go on and get a WCW title match out of this? Could Chris Benoit, really set that bar? So I was really sucked in because of all that.
Well, that's awesome, and that's the way it should be. So obviously Bret Hart was one of your favorite wrestlers in the beginning?
Bret Hart, Chris Benoit. Guiltily, I admit that I used to love Sid Vicious at WCW.
Hey, what's wrong with loving Sid Vicious?
Oh, nothing. I know there's a lot of the internet wrestling community that's like, oh my gosh, Sid was the worst promo cutter.
Oh, Sid was the best, dude.
Oh, I know. The half the brain line. I love that.
Sid was so great because he was believable. I believed that he could eat me alive as a kid. Like, he just screamed crazy psychopath.
Oh, definitely. Sid was believable, even though he would blunder his lines like myself. I just loved the fact that he got so intense and excited and everything. I loved it when he won the WCW title. I was sad that they had to strip him because of all the corporate bullshit going on with the title scene. But man, that was my shit back in the day, watching like shitty WCW storylines circa the 1999 to 2001 era.
That's amazing. That's the first person. You're the first person I've heard that got into it through that.
I know, it's like the craziest thing. And then I got sucked into WWE, and I haven't left since.
So talk about some of the other wrestlers who caught your eye in not only in the beginning, but as you went into WWE.
John Cena was the one that I knew from the get-go that he would be a huge star in the business. I don't know why I knew it, just because of his rap gimmick. I figured, he's going to continue that Attitude Era stuff going on for years. He's the new Austin. Boy, did he get me good on that. He turned the product PG, and that was like, ew.
Yeah, never give up.
I wasn't necessarily always sucked in by the crazy stuff. It was just one of the things of, Yeah, I know they got to change it, but do you have to go like super corny with it?
Yep. You can still be serious and be PG.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Batista's run. I'm trying to think of all the technical guys too, because like at first I hated Kurt Angle. I was like, man, he just gets under my skin. But I started to like love the fact that he was a huge technical guy. I loved Kurt Angle. Of course, Jericho is a big influence on my e-fetting career too. I have lots of reinventions of my character because of him. In fact, that's where I kind of ripped the name Zion from when I was doing e-fetting. I used to be known as Darin Hollywood before I started anything.
Nice.
Yeah, and so I just decided to rebrand myself under Zion because I was like, man, I want something that's kind of biblical like Chris Jericho. That's where I got the ripoff. So yeah, a lot of my stuff's ripoff going into some of the Matt Hardy and things that we'll talk about later.
Well, good deal. So you were into Chris Jericho. You were into these technical wrestlers as well.
Cruiserweights too. Sorry, didn't add that to my stuff.
Yeah, no, cruiserweights would catch your eye depending on, or no matter where you're at, WCW or the WWE.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you found e-wrestling.
I was a part of this game called No DQ Battle Arena. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Have you ever had experience with that?
I have no idea.
It was this like RP game online where you'd click these squares and you try to run into wrestlers, almost like a Pokemon variant of a game. And you'd have like 2 moves and a special and all that kind of stuff. You'd pick those 2 moves and try to beat the wrestlers, get your level up, all that stuff. I got introduced by that game by my good friend Brian Hollywood.
Oh.
Yeah, so Brian Hollywood and I, for a lot of people who don't know that are outside the HLW realm, are best friends in real life. We used to live within about 5 minutes of each other when we were growing up. We could walk to each other's houses.
That makes being a tag team so much easier.
Oh, I know. It's really easy to sync up on storylines and text each other's ideas. But the reason I start out with Battle Arena is we met a guy by the name of Brian Willett. I don't know if a lot of people might remember that name. I know Michael Norcia, who might listen to this, would remember Willett, and probably he's cringing when he hears that name. He was the one that introduced Brian to e-fetting. As Brian got into PWX, I was curious, and like the brash, dipshitted character of Zion is, I dove in head first, failed miserably in John Pariah's PWX Fed. In fact, as years went on, Pariah told me, he's like, I thought you were going to fail and fail miserably. Norcia would tell you the same story because he was tweeting about it the other day, saying, man, if you think Zion's bad now, geez, you should have dealt with him in his rookie years. I was a bigger dipshit. I was burying people left and right, didn't have any character development. It was just those corny ass promos that were just promos.
Oh, you're supposed to have character development.
I know. I
gotta change my stuff up. No, that's awesome though. So you dove into PWX, and is this a role play fed?
Yeah, that was a role play fed. I've always been a part of role play feds for the most part of my career.
And you immediately dove into original character feds.
Yep. So it was the toughest transition I've ever made. And I probably learned a lot of bad habits because Pariah was a Chikara and ROH fan.
Nice.
Not saying that those are bad feds, but just sometimes you get too much into your own shit where you believe your own hype and all that kind of stuff.
No, not knee fetting.
No, never.
So you're in roleplay feds, and you're promoing as Darin Zion at the time?
Yeah, I won my first match because I think 3 people no-showed.
Nice.
And then after
there
that,
you go.
I was hype, and Pariah's like, all right, I'm going to give the kid the test, and puts me up against people like Michael Norcia. I forget half of the other people he put me up against, but I would lose and lose and lose. And I finally one night texted Pariah, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And so he starts educating me. He gets me in touch with Norcia. He gets me in touch with Noah Hansen, who at the time was amazing. He's still amazing as a fedder, but he at the time was like top notch back in those days.
So you say at the time, when was this year wise?
2005, after I'd graduated high school.
Incredible that you not only started your first character that you're still handling today, but that you immediately got into the game with all these people and they're still around you to this day.
Yeah, we've got Brian Hollywood who's still around, Noah Hansen, who I still have in touch with afterwards. Norcia we talk from time to time, but we have this love-hate relationship. It's like two brothers, of course. he wouldn't admit that he likes me, but I'll admit that even though, we try to play it off that we hate each other, I have a hell of a lot of respect for that man.
There you go. That's nice. And e-vetting, despite the shit talking, you gotta love when someone's good at the game.
Oh yeah, he's still, even though he can't RP as much anymore, he's still one of the best.
So you get started and you won by luck in your first match, which is always nice because I remember those runs where maybe half the matches someone wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So you're getting into the game, you're role playing, and you're now getting coached up. What are these guys telling you to get better?
A lot of it is learn how to describe things. I can't even remember all that stuff because it's been like 14, 15 years since I've been doing this stuff. And most of it's come second nature. But a lot of it's come up with character development, come up with a story to add to your character development, come up with the whys, the hows, describe things, put in some good trash talk. Well, Norcia is probably the best trash talker, and I'm letting him down with half the stuff I say. But come up with your own style of everything and just make your own brand. And I'm trying to remember, I think I went to their PWX developmental brand at the time, EvoX, and won my first title.
That's great. And so you get your first taste of gold. And how was that for you?
It was awesome. I will admit I was marking out when I won the Pride Championship, if I remember. I wanted to win the world title, but back in those days, there was no way I was ever going to hit the PWX title scene. We had Norcia, Skylar Kelly. I can't remember what his shoot name was. Tyler Boyd was at the top of the game. Brian Willett would be here and there. Noah Hansen. There's a ton of people. I think Violent K was another name. I don't know if a lot of people know that one, but I'm just throwing out names that I remember from yesteryear.
And so as your experience with that moved on, what happened next?
I ended up winning they had how has the LSD championship and the Icon championship. Well,
Sure.
They don't have the Icon championship anymore, but they used to have those 2 second-tier championships. I ended up getting the hybrid title like 2 or 3 times under my wing. I won their next generation championship. That was a fun story. I was on a choir tour for college in Germany, and I remember staying up late writing all of my RPs that night and won the next gen title, being fired because I thought I wasn't going to be able to write. But I came up with another character that was a masked character and ripped off the mask and won the title.
Nice. So, yeah, you're getting your first taste of gold now. Obviously, all of the things that these guys had coached you up on, they were kind of teaching you how to write for the Fed head for the first time.
Yeah, and it was a tough experience. Like, it was the hardest experience to grit your teeth and get into the writing game under those guys.
Yeah, it's always intimidating when you don't feel like you're adequate against the top of the card.
Yeah. It wasn't until the second round of PWX. So we folded back, I think, in 2007 for the first time. And that was a lot. A lot of PWX's issues were due to egos. Like, that's just the name of the game in e-fetting.
Mm-hmm.
You have a whole bunch of people who are just egotistical about their work. And watching it fold was saddening to me because I was like, man, why does all these people get their egos in the way? Why do they let themselves get in the way of having fun? So we sit back, we try to reopen PWX at one point. That's the run we don't really talk about as much. And then we had a second run of PWX, and Pariah had met a guy by the name of Tyler Graves, handler name of Jay. A lot of people know him as kind of a flake. I think he was a really good guy. He actually was the one that told Pariah to give me a chance at being staff in PWX.
Your first experience with staff?
Yes.
Nice.
I was a staff member of PWX for a long time. And for those of you who don't know how Pariah worked, Pariah was very laid back, but there'd be a lot of times he'd get caught up in the retail world. So he'd kind of set off to the side at times and let people run the books and do a lot of stuff. Well, both he and Jay were really big into doing retail, or they'd get tired really quickly. But I'm one of those people that's got a lot of endurance in him. I'm never quit. I never give up. Yeah, John Cena stuff. I want to push the Fed forward. So I ended up with a book at one time in PWX. A lot of people didn't know that about me. I actually booked PWX in the second era of it.
Nice. And that was your first booking experience too. What did you learn from doing that, having that responsibility?
God, I hate egos.
Welcome to Fed heading.
Right? I was like, I don't ever want to Fed, but there's times I've talked about it to other people. It's been a dream of mine to do it, but I just don't have the time and the patience for it.
Yep. It's tough, and it's definitely a very, very big commitment.
Yeah, one of the big changes that I implemented in PWX was we had a lot of staff members holding titles, and that really is a big no-no. I think that's where a lot of the egos got in check from studying stuff. Pariah got pissed off when I said, we're going to not have any staff hold the top title. You can go for any other title but the world title. The world title is the title for the talents. The rest of it is open game, open season.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to paint Pariah in a negative light. He always wanted to win that title, and I wish I could have given it to him because, damn, that dude built a lot of talent in this industry, and I have a hell of a lot of respect for the man. But, like, I remember the time when I won my first PWX title, it really wasn't a true, I RP'd and got the title. We had a thing that was like the Money in the Bank briefcase, and I had to be the transitional champion in between it all because we had made that edict of no staff is holding the world title, and that was just depressing to me. I was like, dang it, I don't get to win my first world title legit. This is bullshit. I only get to hold it for an hour's time, and I got to go put over Jacob Wright at the time.
It's always tough with those briefcase deals because you never know what's going to happen.
Well, I had used the briefcase as a way to get it on to a person who was not staff. He was match riding, and I didn't care if the match riders had the title. They're not staff. They don't have any decision-making powers, but I wanted somebody that could really amp up the talent to be like, man, this is a new chapter in PWX. This is exciting. Unfortunately, within about a year or two's time, PWX falls again, and we try a third time later. I actually won the world title legit. That was exciting. At least I think I did. It was me and Brian Hollywood again, and Pariah said, I want legit, but you never know with Pariah. That was the caveat. He might have said no staff, and I told Pariah, I was like, I don't want to be known as staff. I'll help, program the website and everything else on the third run, but I didn't want to be known as staff until I was like ready to retire. But it was me and Hollywood at one point running PWX in the third generation. And again, both other times the egos got to it, killed it off. And after Hollywood shut it down and handed it off to me to shut down, I basically told Pariah, I was like, dude, we're not bringing PWX back unless I give the say-so. And we've never brought it back, obviously, because of what happened to him. There's a lot of lineage to it. So,
yeah. So after your PWX experience, what happens next?
I had thought I was going to be retired at that point. I was enjoying retirement. I never had gotten the PWX Hall of Fame like I wanted to. Never going to be that Hall of Fame wrestler. And I'm like, man, I'm just enjoying not role playing until I run into a good friend of mine now who was a rival at the time, good old Scooter McGavin's Scotty Wood on Twitter.
Scotty Wood.
Yes. Scotty Wood was trash talking Brian Hollywood one day on Twitter, so I jumped in. Oh, yeah. Scotty runs his mouth all the time. It's great. He's a good buddy. At the time, though, I was just like, all right, you ain't going to talk about my buddy. So he and I are just shit-talking one another back and forth on Twitter. And he brings in Frankie. I just keep razzing the hell out of him. Maybe not my best trash talk game, but I'm just sitting there enjoying the whole interaction because he's like trying to talk this tough game. And I'm just like shredding him saying, you're bringing your teenage son in with Legos and is all this kind of stuff. And I'm just talking about how stupid the kid is and how stupid he is and all that stuff. And I'm sitting to myself going, I may have that itch. And Brian Hollywood approaches me one night and he's like, Lee's been talking about potentially bringing you in. You're just like trash talking Scotty to no end. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I told myself secretly if Lee Best wanted to have me, I would totally be down to try HOW instead of doing the same old when Pariah tried to open 2CW. So, like, I took the risk. I jumped into HOW.
And when was that?
I think 2012, 2013. My memory's a little bit fuzzy. Definitely Stevenspedia might be correcting me on that.
I'm sure we'll see a Stevenspedia entry update.
Yeah, so probably like, Darren Zion got this wrong.
So you joined HOW, and it's interesting that you found your way over there. What was HOW like in that era, and how did you fit in at first?
It was crazy. The reason I say it's crazy is because it was a time of transition.
Okay.
The reason I say it's the time of transition is while Mike Best was still on the top, and we had Jason Parker Davidson, Tara Michaels Davidson, we had the John Sectors and all that stuff, they were burnt out. And you could tell. I know Mike Best today is like 10 times different and 10 times better than Mike Best back in that era when I first dealt with him. And not saying that he's a bad guy, just more saying that I know how that burnout goes. You have a lot of stuff on your plate. You deal with a lot of bullshit and fetting. You get tired of handling all the crap that people have. You get tired and burnt out. Your material gets down. But you could tell that he was on his way out at that time. And you didn't know it at the time when you first signed because you still had that. I wouldn't say it's the golden era. I can't remember what they call the second era in HOW. But there still was really good top talent, but it was a prime time for Darren Zion to come in with all the shit talking and confidence and believing in himself as possible.
That's awesome. And so how kind of, you said it was a different time then. It was a transitional period. Mike was kind of on his way out or with burnout. For Zion slipping in there, how did you fit storyline wise and competition wise? Were you able to compete?
I don't remember exactly where it was, but I came in on like Iconic and debuting with Sex and Money, which was Noah Hansen and Brian Hollywood at the time.
Oh, so it was the three of you were together.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a surprise. So the original Sex and Money in PWX was Skylar Kelly, Tyler Boyd, Noah Hansen, and Brian Hollywood. Brian Hollywood being the new young rookie at the time. In this iteration, Brian Hollywood was trying to reestablish himself and show that he had this dominant streak that he had in PWX. He was trying to become this leader of a stable. He'd just been Brian James Thomas, which didn't get over well. He was with Ground Zero. He was floundering around because that was still peak time. Well, he decided to reset. I'm just remember talking to him about it, telling him, just reset and be yourself. Who gives a fuck about this Brian James Thomas shit that you're running? Be you. Wise words that I'll get into on where I am today. But transitioning to that, Brian Hollywood was like, man, you should come in. This is going to be fun. Just come in and be my bodyguard. And I was like, I'll just do part-time, whatever. I come in, we tear house. I believe it was Ground Zero or whatever John Sector, Scott Stevens, and Ryan McKenna was at the time. They were the tag team champions, or they were chasing the titles or whatever. We were in this feud with them. And my first storyline, of course, was not only feuding with Ground Zero or the remnants of it, it was I got booked on the first card against Scotty Wood. And I remember that first time, that's when I first learned how Lee Best books. It's like week to week in a way. And I'm just sitting there going, why the fuck did you book that, Lee? That's a pay-per-view money match. We've been just shit talking and everything on Twitter. And I didn't understand the method to the madness at the time because, of course, I'm the new rookie that doesn't know shit. But I come in, I beat Scotty. What I remember going on, I think it was like a 9-0, 10-0 record until Hollywood and I got into a number one contenders match for the HOW title, and I lost big time.
Oh.
Hollywood knew me, and he could expose all my shit back in the day.
It's tough when you go up against a friend because they can get you with a different angle.
Well, the funny thing is I was usually the guy who could outright and knew how to write towards Pariah. Brian knows how to write towards Lee better.
It makes sense. I mean, everybody has a certain style they write, and everybody has a certain style they like. And when it meshes up, you found your home.
Yeah. And that was funny because that was the first tension of breakup between sex and money. And that was a long build. We ended up, during the whole breakup tension, we ended up winning the tag team titles, me and Hollywood, and we were running a really good game. I think I beat one of Mike Best's teams. I can't remember if it was Tara Michael Davidson, where I pinned Tara and retained the titles. But then the second outing, I pinned Mike Best to retain the tag titles.
Nice. There you go.
So I think it was like a few weeks later, Mike Best ended up quitting because he was burnt out and he had another idea, and he ended up going to Utah after that. And again, Mike, if you're listening, I'm not trying to shit talk you.
I'm sure he's going to be ready.
Oh, I know. He'll shit talk me. We have that relationship where we love to razz one another.
And then that's why there's a shit talk channel in How Chat.
Exactly.
I love it. Anything goes.
Mike Best transitions out. We still were led by like Jason Parker Davidson, Tara Michaels Davidson. I'm trying to remember who else we had in HOW besides Scott Stevens, Scotty, what all the others. I know JD was a part of it as Ray McAvey. And we all had some really good times during that time trying to build morale because we lost Mike, and that was a hard time for us. But I remember getting to the mid-card and beating Hollywood to a singles championship in HOW. That was a fun thing to tout in my first couple years in HOW. I remember winning the Icon Championship. I won a War Games match, came in second.
Nice. There you go.
In War Games. And that was a show that had 2 War Games matches. One was Boardwalk Wrestling, and one was HOW for the title. I lost and won the Icon title, the second place thing that Mike references in his role play with Dan Ryan. And I ended up getting the Icon title, and I remember feuding with the Incredible One. Yeah, so Tio and I were feuding for the Icon title, and we were having this wonderful interaction with Boardwalk Wrestling and 4CW at the time. And, of course, Boardwalk gets its infamy for some dumb crap that they do and ruins that relationship. But I remember still working with them at the time, winning Boardwalk's title, keeping the Icon title for a while, getting the LSD title. I think I won 3 Icon titles in the second era of How before it shut down. And then the final main event of it all was Brian Hollywood versus Darren Zion for all the singles belts in HOW.
Damn.
So we main evented. So going from the transition period from that to I went to 4CW next, and that's probably the worst time of my e-fetting career.
And why would that be?
No dogging on Perry Wallace. Perry Wallace is a good dude. He and I still keep in touch here and there, but a lot of it was I was starting to lose my self-confidence in myself. I had a lot of anxiety issues building up that I wouldn't talk to anybody about. I didn't necessarily... I always wanted attention, and I just wanted the recognition of, hey, I am a good talent. I bought into that hype that I always told myself, and man, did I fall when everybody kept razzing me. I just let it get to me. I let it tear me apart. I lost that confidence that I had as a writer.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when people put you down. It's tough when you're trying to write for a group, and sometimes people don't appreciate it. And yeah, it makes it tough to be there.
Yeah, a lot of it wasn't necessarily e-fetting causing it. I've always had anxiety issues. I remember growing up with anxiety issues, and just after a while not recognizing that the razzing was just for fun and part of the characters and everything, it tore into me, and I started doubting my writing style, and I started letting all the voices get into my head, and it's why I had a lot of downward spiraling and stuff.
And this is just after you had a hell of a run elsewhere.
Yeah, I had a really hell of a run in HOW. It was pretty damn good. I even won Boardwalk's top title, and it was funny because people from 4CW, HOW were on my side when I won the title because there were some rule changes in there that got a little shady. And I was telling them, look, I don't care. I'm not, I don't take this seriously. I am just happy that I won the title. And they're just like razzing Boardwalk. And Pettis was a good guy to me. He was a good friend. He and I never had any beefs. And quarrels. In fact, Pettis was one that gave me some really good advice on the ring announcing deal.
There you go. That does make for a good person in real life.
Yeah. I'm not trying to necessarily change everybody's perspectives on him. You can have your own perspectives, but my interactions with Michael Pettis were always positive. Just like Perry Wallace, he and I always got along, and Lee Best and I and John Pariah and I, we all got along. It was a good relationship. If you just let that stuff build on you and that burnout get to you, even if you've been doing it for 15 years, you're going to have a downward spiral or two. So I remember trying to run this storyline of being like the jobberweight champion and 4CW. Zev Mark is that character. I'm like, I was just running it to have some fun because I was just tired of fedding, and I wanted to show that I'm durable and I'm reliable and I'm a good hand.
And that's a valuable part of any roster.
Yeah. So at that point, when 4CW and I had that falling out, where I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to burn my fucking career down. I remember tweeting them one night after I'd met with my therapist, and I'm just like, it's your guys' fault and everything like that. That's one of those things that I regret to this day, like razzing on their roster after the fact that they welcomed me in, even though they didn't necessarily like me. They welcomed me in after HOW closed, and I burned that down, and that's probably one of my biggest regrets.
That question comes up later as well, so we've already...
Yeah, that's not necessarily the biggest regret in e-fetting. There's a couple more stories with that, but like biggest serious regrets. So we think that Darin Zion's done at that time, and I'm just like, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. And all of a sudden one day I come on Twitter, and there's Mike Best. Mike Best has returned. He's tweeting shit to people. Scott Stevens is tweeting shit to people. And I'm like, what the fuck is this all about? I can't remember. It was like 2 years ago.
And Hal is back.
There. Yeah, I texted them, and they're like, dude, HOW is coming back. So Mike and I used to have all this beef because like Zion used to be so serious into his shit. Like I bought into my own character type. I became my character. And that's like a big cardinal sin in e-fetting is you don't become your character. Well, the one thing in wrestling I believe that you should if you're going to be a heel or a face or whatever, you should be likable or just be yourself. And if you're a face, you just be yourself. You don't have to be loved by everybody, but just be yourself, be genuine. It doesn't have to be the same Dusty Rhodes baby face that, you're working towards the American dream and you're doing a good thing, or John Cena, I'm Super Cena, we're going to overcome kind of thing. Just being a genuine guy, I think that's a great way to get over as a baby face. But as a heel, I was the kind of person that if I wanted you to hate me, I'd say anything to make you want to punch me in the face.
That's what a heel should do, right? As long as you don't go overboard.
Yeah, you don't want to go overboard to non-PC land. If you do that, you've just hit full-blown burnt toast land.
So what happens next?
So after Mike Best and I squashed the beef, which was great, Mike gave me some of the best career advice ever.
Beth scooshed?
Yeah, so a lot of people wouldn't know this, and this will be funny in going into some future stuff here. Mike Best gave me the best advice that transcended e-fetting.
Transcended?
Yes. So going into my ring announcing career a little bit later, and I still want to hit on this story because this is like the warm and fuzzy feelings that like showing Mike that I've learned something that he taught me over the years.
Okay.
I ran into this veteran in the real wrestling world that's just talking his shit and burying people left and right and believing his own hype. And I turned to one of the talents at the show, and I remember saying to them, he doesn't need to be just burying the people. He needs to build them up, because the more he buries them, he's going to look like a dipshit when he gets beaten later tonight. And the person turns to me and is like, you're fucking right. You get this. And you've only been in this game for like 2 months. So I'm sitting there going, yeah, I learned that from an e-fetter, and Mike Best was the guy that taught me that lesson.
Yep. If you don't build your opponent up, it means nothing when you beat him.
Absolutely. You look like a dipshit if you get beaten by him, and it doesn't mean anything if you beat him.
That's right.
And that's still lessons that I have to remember daily. But so Mike's given me good advice for the redemption storyline, and like floundering in HOW, that's been a tough cut because I feel like I'm back in PWX of 2005, and that's not a dig because dumbass Darin back then didn't understand the game. I am just in a talent pool that is so fucking amazing that I have to realize that my part might not be what exactly I would have anticipated it after living in my own hype for years.
Well, listen, everybody wants to be world champion, but you can only have one.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be a champion, and you can only have like however many titles you've got on your roster.
Yep.
So a lot of this has been just me trying to navigate and learn how to have fun as opposed to being so damn serious. There's times I get frustrated, and there's times where I want to give up, but I've had a lot of ass kickings from Max. I've had a lot of ass kickings from Mike. I've had a lot of ass kickings from Colin, and Scotty Wood even's given me some great advice in this run. It's been a lot of learning opportunities, and while I'm not necessarily, the same Zion that I was 15 years ago when I started this game, I've learned a lot how to build the opponents and tell the stories. I've learned maybe to tone back my trash talk a little bit, or at least add some build as to, you're a great wrestler. I'm going to beat you and get your credibility like I did with Cash this week. But at least at the same time, throw some shade towards it and not undersell myself like I had done.
It's great when you can learn from mistakes you've made earlier in the game.
Oh, absolutely. And I may still not make a lot of sense. I may bounce all over the place, but that's the Zion brand. Like, after talking with Cash, I remember writing that role play just being so defeated. I'm done with trying to write for a Matthews character. I just want to be me. I want to liberate myself. Say what I want to say. Let it all out. I don't care if Zion is eclectic, a dumbass, however you want to portray Zion. I don't care. I'm at the point in my career, I might wrap it up and I would be happy with what happened. I don't care if I ever win the HOW title. I mean, sure, yes, deep down inside, I want to win that sucker.
Of course.
More than anything in the world. I'm not trying to downplay that thing. That would be like the cherry on top of a career, being an HOW Hall of Famer when I never would have ever expected to. Those are the kinds of things, I'd love to have happen, but let's be realistic. Darin Zion may not necessarily achieve that status. And if that happens, and my time happens tomorrow, I'm happy with what I've had happen. I've made a lot of great friendships. I've learned a lot of great life lessons. That's what I love about Efeding. It's not necessarily like, I could win titles. That's great. That's a great thing to have on the accomplishment. But for me, Fetting is just building relationships and having fun.
That's it. That's it at the crutch of it. I mean, what you want to do is you want to build friendships. You want to have lasting friendships. Some of my best friends are in the game, and I met them because of the game.
Absolutely.
It's great. And I get on here and I banter with Efed friends more than I do my real friends.
I banter a lot with Scotty Wood. He and I have been talking about relationships. We've been talking about beer. We've talked about politics, which is funny because Kansas boy and a Connecticut boy, you've got differing opinions. But the coolest thing about that is we're laid back. We can shoot the shit. And that's the fun of this hobby.
It is. And there's a great group of guys over in HO Wrestling, over at HOWrestling.com, High Octane Wrestling. But we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Missouri Valley Wrestling.
That was a funny story because at that point, Lee had let me go of my HOW contract during this whole stint because he knew I was burnt out. He actually, when you're burnt out and don't know it, when you're one of your best friends outside of Wichita, Kansas, no offense to Hollywood, he would have told me to keep going. But Scotty Wood, being staff on HOW, was like, dude, do you want to take a break? And I'm sitting there going, why are you asking that? Multiple times. And then you ask for feedback from Lee Best, and he's like, do you want to take a break? And you're like, fuck. Burnout's then when your Fed head's coming to you about shit. And I'm like, yeah. I said, knowing that, I need a break. I'll write matches. I'm not giving up on you. I'm not that guy. I don't want to be known as, oh, he's flaking because he can't take the pressure. I would have much rather written matches and had fun like that. That was a good experience. But, man, at that point, I was like, I'm just going to write matches. And JD approaches me one day. He's like, dude, can I use Zion? I'm like, sure. let's come up with some ideas. Let's spitball some things. And his idea was so crazy. I loved it. He ended up giving Zion the MVW title the first night he debuted in full time for MVW. And I was just like,
believing in you.
Yeah, I was just like sitting there going, "You crazy, JD? You crazy, man? Like Zion Brand is dead. Let's do this Matthews thing."
And so Missouri Valley Wrestling is a one-person angle Efed.
Yes, it is a one-person angle Efed. That's 1.5 people now.
No, 1.5. Are you doing 0.5?
Yeah, so I say a half because I actually write my own promos. I do like 0.005. JD does like 99.999. Yeah.
And you can find them on Twitter at MVW Heartland. And there's no website, or is it just all on Twitter?
There's a website that he has linked to it. It's like, it's a WordPress site.
It's
I can't remember it.
MVWA2.wordpress.com.
It's the WA part that gets me confused in the two. But I usually go through his Twitter account. Sorry, JD. Don't mean to hit that live on thing. I'm 3 beers deep on this thing.
Time to be honest. No, but yeah, you can check them out. MVWA2.wordpress.com. That's where he posts the shows. And they look like recap shows, and he's got quite a few on here.
JD is like the bomb. Not only does he write like house shows for his stuff, not only does he write full results for stuff, dude writes full-time in HOW. That guy deserves to have like world championships galore for all the stuff he does.
Nice. Yeah, that's a hell of an accomplishment to do all that.
Oh, I know. That dude has like one of the most creative minds I've ever dealt with. I'm just like throwing him ideas and coming up with stuff for Zion. And I think I decided like before we even did this interview, I'm like, let's do some rebranding and have some fun with stuff. So I pitched to him. I'm like, I'm coming back. I'm tired of just being HOW exclusive right now. Mm-hmm. Not that I don't love HOW. It's always going to be my home. It's going to be my number one home. I don't care what else I do outside of e-fedding, it's going to be home. That's home now. But going into this, I came up with the idea of, hey, Matthews is a part of this big group called the Sports Entertainment Corporation, the SEC. And I had rebuilt myself as big money, Darin Matthews. And yes, Matt Hardy, I used your trademark.
And let's talk about that. So, Big Money Matthews is the character you were going by, and here comes Colin being Colin and having a good time. And Colin goes on Cameo and he pays Matt Hardy to do a promo on Big Money Matthews.
That shit made me laugh. Like that was like the second best part of my day. The first part, of course, was I ended up getting asked on a date like right before that for pre-Valentine's. I was like, what the heck is my day like? I come on, get the date, and I look on the HOW chat, and there's the cameo from Big Money Matt Hardy. And I'm just like, what the fuck? How did I deserve that? And it's not like at first I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, nah, there's no way he's going to promo on me. I'm skipping this. And then everybody's talking about it in the Trash Talk Fest. So I'm like, all right, I got to check this shit out. I click on it and I'm like, oh, no, you did it, Matt Hardy. The internet geek in me is like, dude, you just got a promo on me. And I'm about ready to rebrand as Darin Zion. What the hell?
You got a promo back.
Oh no, I'm actually tweeting him, and this is low key that I haven't necessarily talked out details or ironed out things. Like Colin got my big brain going on this shit. So like when I tweeted Matt Hardy appreciation, I low key threw out a challenge like, hey, why don't you step in the e-fedding game? We'll see if we can do this.
I saw that you were Darin Zion or Darin Matthews version 1.
Yeah, there was a trash talk after me and Cash were talking about Cash and I were friendly shooting the shit after our RPs. And of course he's like, dude, good job on getting your balls back. I'm like, nah, that's not me at my peak form. He's like, no, that's you're marching to the beat of your own drum again. And I love seeing the fact that you're bringing yourself out of your funk finally. Doesn't necessarily mean it ain't going to yield anything, but hey, you know what? I'm going to have fun with it. But
hey, it's the same as you mentioned earlier. When your Fed head comes to you and tells you need a break, it's, it's a sad realization. But when other people come to you and say, hey, I'm glad to see you're doing this again, it's a great realization.
yeah, and again, I may talk shit in the HOW Fed, but for those who might think I'm taking myself seriously back in the day, let's put the disclaimer out there. I don't take myself serious worth a shit anymore. At this point, I know my place. If I'm talking my shit, just let me talk my shit. I know you don't need to bring me down. I might be excited that I win one match out of like 500.
It's just fun at that point.
Now. But, yeah, at this point, I'm just like, whatever. But the big thing that I'm excited about is, like, I big-brained it, and I'm like, I'm trying to see if Matt Hardy will follow me back or egg into it. Because Matt Hardy and that would be like a dream come true for me. Matt Hardy was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Not because he was like the best wrestler ever. I love his creativity. He has all kinds of crazy ideas. He sometimes throws spaghetti at the wall and it doesn't necessarily work, but he doesn't give up. Like, sometimes he'll be in world championship programs, and sometimes he likes enjoying being the manager and the side guy. And that's the kind of stuff I love about pro wrestling, is just having that passion for the business.
That's right. And if you got the passion, it makes it easier to do the writing and get into these storylines and angles.
Absolutely. So I'm enjoying the fact that, I've enjoyed his character, like from version 1, obsolete and delete. I've enjoyed him being a Hardy Boy. I've enjoyed that story of his. And to see that Colin spent money to have him trash talk me, to throw in the HOW trash talk Fed, to me, like, I'm like giggling like a little schoolgirl going, man, that backfired on your trash talk. I'm nerding out. But now I'm just like, what if I could get Matt Hardy to do an Efed match? I know it's the stupidest idea ever. It's crazy. It's like big brain, but at the same time, it's like, no, he's never going to do something like that. Might as well try. He cut a promo on me, did a very good job, and convincingly made me want to have a match with the dude. I can't do it in real life, but the funny thing to transition into some real life stuff is I actually worked with I didn't work with him. I got to meet Shannon Moore in Salina, Kansas like a year ago before this all happened. Yeah, having some of those connections. It was a different promotion under the sisterhood of things in that alliance. They let me come backstage, shoot the shit with Shannon Moore. Man, that was like one of the coolest experiences I ever had, because I was a big Shannon Moore fan back in the day.
And I heard he's a cool guy in person.
He is one of the coolest guys ever. Him and Heath Slater, those are the two. I met Heath Slater not because he got fired, but I met him at a quick trip in Wichita, Kansas after a show one night. And the dude shared me some of their backstage plans that matched up with the dirt sheet stuff. He's like, we're supposed to feud with the Shield. We were supposed to be the baby faces. And we were supposed to get some tag team title run. And it just didn't work out.
So before we get to the questions from the crowd, let's talk about you killing ECW.
That was a fun story. So the reason I bring that up on my Twitter feed is because we E-Fedders were the best trolls ever. And everybody knows this whole story about new ECW launching under Alexander Wolf. Nowadays, he was some just no-name gamer that wanted to relaunch the ECW brand as a WWE 2K20 streaming thing on Twitch. So one night I'm seeing this crap going on my Twitter feed, and I'm just like asking him questions, like legit questions. Like, oh man, I can't wait till you do Raven and stuff. He was posting, like, I think it was like Brad Jones, something like that. It looked like Brad Maddox Goldberg with this like crap shoot graphic design thing with Brad Maddox's head on Goldberg's body. And like at that point, you knew it was fake as crap. And I just, like, I called him out on that, but then he's, like, all moody, so I'm like, I'm trying to be aware because I don't know this little mark that thinks he's all that. I ask him questions, trying to show him I'm supportive, all that kind of stuff. Well, dude kills it off because obvious reasons, and he goes on to his personal Twitter account to tweet my shoot name out to the entire world that it was me bullying him, that he quit developing the new ECW. And I had all my boys in the back for the PCW shows laughing their collective asses off that I killed ECW.
So that's a good moniker to have, the guy who killed ECW.
Yes, so we can add that to the 15 million monikers that Darin Zion has.
Terrific. So are you ready for these Twitter questions?
Oh, man, I am ready for them.
Awesome. Up first, we've got Scoot Stuvens. And Scoot wants to know, do you still love me, Duran?
I still love you, Scoot Stevens. You're better than the real Stevens. Just kidding, real Stevens. I love you just as much. You know this.
Just kidding, real Stevens. Scoot Stevens. Okay. At Rodriguez Crash, favorite tag team partner?
My favorite tag team partner is the obvious choice on this one. It is Brian Hollywood. Gotta plug the Hollywood Boys versus the Hollywood Bros.
Yes.
There is some history in that one. We wanted this to be a pay-per-view match, me and Hollywood, but unfortunately with how Lee books things, it just happens to fall on the real stuff. Little known fact about me and Hollywood, we've been known as the Hollywood Boys for almost 20 years. We came up with a moniker to come up with a vlog before that was known as vlogs on MySpace, and we've had that name for a long time. I'm sure you guys have a lot of history in your Brov's name too.
Yeah, not so much.
But
we've been the Bruvs since like 2016.
You're copyright infringing us. I'm kidding.
Or English, bruv.
More English, bruv. But Hollywood's definitely my favorite partner. No offense to you, Crash. I enjoy working with you. I enjoy working with Hanson. I've enjoyed working with Scotty Woods, Stevens. They've been partners of mine, but hands down, Hollywood and I have had a connection for like 20 years outside of e-fetting. We've experienced each other's ups and downs in real life. There is no trading Brian Hollywood for anybody else in the world.
There you go. Until we invite you into the Bros. Anyway, how did you come up with Dylan Zion, and Dylan Matthews?
So I came up with Darin Zion. I kind of touched base on this earlier with Jericho. I am a big Christian outside of e-fetting. Not going to preach, not going to throw it in your face. Scotty Wood can tell you all about how I am very flexible about that kind of stuff. My biggest thing was, I was like, I don't want to be known as Darin Jericho. What's another biblical reference? So before I was a Christian, I look it up and I'm like, Darin Zion. That's perfect. I used to be known as Darin Hollywood before that because Brian Hollywood and Darin Hollywood were supposed to be the Hollywood Boys, the crappy tag team name with the Z and everything on it for the 90s when we actually, the 2000s when we actually created the team. I came up with Darin Matthews differently, though. I had a fetter back in Ricochet Pro Wrestling back in the early 2000s when I started it. Use my shoot name, and I don't want to use my shoot last name on the podcast because I don't want any doxing. I've said some stupid shit over the years, just like everybody else under their real names, and they posted their real names online or their character names and used them. And, you know, I like me as a character and me as a person, you know, night and day. I'm not a dipshit. I said some dipshit stuff younger. I don't want it tied to my last name because I have some good career ties and I don't want to lose that. And I came up with Matthews as a way to sidetrack it. So I have like 3 levels. I have the in-character Darin Zion. His real name as a character is Darin Matthews, and then you have Darin Blank, who is the real Darin Matthews Zion person. I don't know how I came up with Matthews. I think I got it from William Regal. I think that's his shoot last name. I think he's Darin Matthews too. I can't remember. But I came up with the big money part. Yes, Colin, you called me on that shit. I came up with it from Matt Hardy because he wasn't using it. I was this big-time HOW guy and MVW, which is a territory. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't come up with something that was funny enough. So I was like, big money, Darin Matthews. It fits the bill of the small time leagues in the storylines.
Your most embarrassing Efed blunder.
2 of them, and they're not the most serious. Number 1, Mike Best gave me a shot at OCW's title, and I totally miffed and not read the show. Called out Mike Best, type up a feud when Mike Best was face in the promotion, and I didn't read it. I screwed up. That was my bad. I wanted to keep pushing Mike Best and Darin Matthews because it was a singles match that everybody had wanted to see for like 6 years. So my bad. I didn't read. That's the cardinal sin of e-fedding. Remember to read the fed that you're in shit. The first most embarrassing moment that's not what we talked about earlier is I kept letting Perry Wallace goad me into creating a side character Twitter account because everybody's like, Clara doesn't exist, which I had a relationship back in the day with an NPC on my Zion character that I brought back to life and sniped and all that kind of crap. And everybody's like, she's not real and all that stuff. So I was like, fine, I'll create a Twitter because I'm going to prove them wrong. I can do this.
She must be real if she's got a Twitter.
Oh, yes, because that's going to prove everything right. I was a dumb shit and didn't think about this thing very through. And I was getting all flustered and angry and believing my own hype at the time. And so I tweet this stupid-ass tweet that Perry Wallace, to this day, has a screenshot and will tweet it at any opportunity that he fucking gets. That little troll bag, I love him half to death, but that little troll bag and I'm hoping that he listens to this and tweets it just for old time's sake, so we can all have a good laugh and bury Zion for good time's sake. I was supposed to tweet from the Clara thing saying, you have to meet my fiance man to man, and that shit blew up.
Because you tweeted from the Zion account.
Yes! That was the biggest blunder of my entire career. Because I was stupid enough to think I could manage like 15,000 Twitter accounts and do it. But nope, that was the stupidest thing I could have ever done.
I've done it, man. I've posted EFED podcast stuff to EWTs. It happens.
Yeah.
That's hilarious, though. I hope we do see the screenshot.
I do, too. And if Perry doesn't have it, Colin, Mike, Max, I don't care who has it. I don't care if Lee Best himself posts it. Post it. We all need a laugh in this damn pandemic.
What year would you say has been your best year so far?
2014. And the reason I say that's the best year of my career is I won multiple icon titles. I was living the dream in multiple feds. It was great. I could use the PWX days. Those were fun. That's great learning opportunity. But going to from the big fish in the small pond to the big fish in the big pond was one of those really exciting years. To be the final 2 people in War Games with Jason Parker Davidson, who was the heir apparent to Mike Best. That was memories for me.
It's definitely an accomplishing year. Hard to argue.
Yes.
At eWrestling, guys, I think for your next gimmick, you should come back as broken Darin Zion, and as a finisher, you should delete people. Your thoughts?
So, JD, I did answer that one via Twitter by accident, not realizing that you had asked that. A lot of my stuff is based off of Matt Hardy, Chris Jericho. I've even used Daniel Bryan and He Who Shall Not Be Named, who killed people in 2007, which I mentioned earlier in the podcast. The reason I'm kind of giving you some more in-depth stuff just because you asked that is because I did answer that on the Twitter feed. The best trash talk I had to that was something that Jason Cash gave me, which was, I will slap his ass back to version version 1 if he decides to wrestle me in the Efed game.
There you have it. And finally on Twitter, we got at Hollywood HUD. Is being stupid your gimmick, or are you just stupid?
You could say yes to both. I mean, there's times I'm like the most gullible person. You could probably work me over and get me to laugh. But I'm not the best articulator and stuff. Let's face it, I'm a data analyst on my 9-to-5 job. I do numbers better than I do words. I fumble, I screw up, I say man-to-man on occasion and say the dumbest shit ever. But you know what? To me, I just love having fun. And, sometimes I play into that hype. But if you ever want to get to know me, like you can hit me up on Discord or you can hit me up on Twitter or whatever. I'll have a conversation. I'm not hiding anything. Sometimes I'm dumb, sometimes I'm stupid. I don't know the world, but you know what? I love the fact that you asked that question because sometimes it's hard to get to know the person behind the character. We get to believe in our own hype. And while some people don't like me out there, and I don't know where your stance is, I haven't really gotten to know you, Hudson. I have a lot of respect for your work. You are probably one of the best trash talkers. I've heard a lot of good things from Mike, Mikey, everybody else out there. I haven't gotten the chance to mend a lot of relationships with people who were associated with 4CW or might be angry with me from that past. But, my Twitter is always open if you can't get a hold of me on Discord. I'd love to get to know everybody in this sport. That's why I've launched this world tour thing that I'm doing. Secret that I'm not, that I'm going to drop in. I'm working on getting to know WWH. Some of the people are kind of iffy on that Fed that I've heard on some of the older circles that I ran into, but I know Noah Hansen's in there. Great dude. I've talked to Mikey and Rick about running in Defiance.
Yes.
I'm thinking about putting in an application. I haven't had a chance to do that. And Devlin, I know we had some beef back in the day from Boardwalk and 4CW days, but man, I want to squash that beef. You were a great talent to work with. I'm sorry I dropped the ball on 2 RPs instead of 3. That was the questionable thing that the HOW rosters and 4CW rosters were wanting to go there. I don't have any beefs. You beat me fair and square, legit. You did a good job, man. I would love to reconnect with all those old relationships. I miss those Interfed days because I used to be a part of CWC and all that stuff. But yeah, that's for me. I love making connections, making new friends, putting HOW out there in a better light. I know some people have old experiences that they're a little hurt about and stuff, but I like what Mike's done. I love what Lee's done. They've done a great job at rebuilding the brand, and they have done excellent. I know I had a lot of things on that one, but I wanted to turn it positive because I know where some of these hater questions go.
Speaking of hater questions, on the Discord, at #1 Muriel Puddings fan, this is Lynn's. Have you ever been in Noah Hansen's KFC kitchen in his kitchen?
We mark out about that shit all the time. We found a Nicolas Cage KFC thing, and we run about it on the side Discords. And there was a mention of the sniper days in the Discord, too.
Oh, we're going to get there.
Oh, I know. We'll hit them both up at the same time so we can kind of save some time. But the sniper days, that was one of my other biggest regrets, too. But
at
the
Colin,
KFC...
whatever happened to the promising sniper career?
Mike Best need that sniper rifle down my fucking throat. Yeah, that was one of the best advices that Mike could give me is make it real for a professional wrestler. Sure, the dark side of the ring shit's great and everything, but if everybody did that, you're just trying to manufacture your own badassery and it's not worth shit. That's one of those life lessons that I've learned, Mike. I've tried my best. I've learned. But yeah, KFC Kitchen, that was funny because I think they were the ones that started it and we were all marking out on it. But I've never met Mark in real life. I've never met Noah Hansen in real life. Noah is a good guy. He's somebody that I'd love to meet and go to meet him where he lives. He and I have talked about it when the pandemic's ended. We talked about it for years about having a beer and hanging out. Noah's a great dude.
There you have it. At John Thompson, TW Combat, what would you consider your greatest accomplishment in the hobby overall?
Greatest accomplishment, that's a tie for being in 2 war games and winning one, which was not the main war games, and coming in second. and winning the PWX title. I never thought I'd be world championship material. I'm probably that talent that's like Daniel Bryan, who floats the mid card to tag title scene to world title scene, but I never really saw myself as a world champion when I did it. I gave myself the fair assessment before I ever became world champion in the hobby of I was always going to be a mid-carder and I was going to be happy about it. I wouldn't care if I won a promotion's next-gen championship, hybrid championship, Intercontinental US, whatever you want to call the equivalent to it. But I never thought I would ever win a world title. So those are two of my biggest highlights of my career, both not only main eventing a HOW pay-per-view and writing 10 RPs and winning a title and winning a big War Games match, but also winning the World Championship in PWX.
Do you like chips? I like chips. Not the TV show, but the snack. What is your favorite type of chip and why?
Chips are one of my favorite snacks. I am a huge spicy nacho Doritos fan. I love collecting those suckers and eating them up. That's probably my weakness on my diet, that I'm trying to lose my 309 pounds, which I'm doing a terrible job by drinking a fourth beer right now.
At Alias, Bang, Marry, Kill, Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman. They can be any age you want.
Well, at this point, we know that Zion's straight from talking about the man-to-man jokes, so we're going to assume Bang is killing people with a sniper rifle right now. So Bang, I'm definitely going with Samuel L. Jackson. He's got a lot of gun skills and sniper rifle experience and all that kind of stuff. Marry Morgan Freeman, because that voice is amazing, and I love hearing that joking thing of where it goes, everybody poops. He's got the voice to relax you with. Kill, unfortunately, Denzel Washington. While you're a great actor and you've done some great work, there's only three choices. We're not going to come up with an exception.
Brian Hollywood or Noah Hansen?
So there's three things to that question.
Yeah, so who would you rather face in a match?
Who would I rather face in a match? Well, I mean, if I'm coasting, I'd want to go with Noah Hansen because I've beaten him many times. No offense, Noah, you're listening, but I've got your number. I got you. I'll take you down. But no, I enjoy facing Brian Hollywood in another aspect because he and I on a different level, we are able to take things and make it personal and believable. Not to say that the e-fetting world has seen 50.5 million Brian Hollywood versus Darin Zion matches in their time, because Lord knows PWX housed about 10 million of those suckers for the world title or any other thing. But we're trying to lay low. We're just decided we're going to tag. We're not going to fight and feud with each other. We had that to kind of springboard my career when I came back as Matthews. But, both of them trade off. I'm going for the easy one. Hansen, he's a good guy, but yeah, I would want to face him because I faced Brian Hollywood 1.5 million times.
Who gives better advice?
Noah Hansen, hands down. Brian Hollywood, while he is a great veteran, and I said that he gave me some of the best advice that would apply to my career. I gave him some of the best advice that would apply to my career. Noah Hansen was the one that spent ages training me. Norcia, God love the dude, but he wasn't as patient as Noah Hansen was. Hansen spent time and divulged and let me ask questions for hours on AOL Instant Messenger when I first got in the hobby. He's the one that probably single-handedly got me to stay in the hobby for years. Hollywood, as time went on, has given me great advice to just be myself and let loose and just not give a shit about what people have said. But in all honesty, I think that Noah Hansen gave me the best advice overall.
And finally, if you have to kill one of them with your little pew-pew sniper rifle, who's it going to be?
Sorry, Noah. I love you, buddy, but Brian's my brother. I can't kill fake blood there. That's like if it had to come down to like a natural survival, because we're like three brothers to each other and we had to eat one of them. He's the guy. He's old. He's decrepit according to both of us, but he'd probably plot to kill kill both of us before we could even do it.
And that question comes to us from Cool Olympus, of course, George.
Yeah, George, you're a good guy. I loved that question. I just didn't understand it at first. Like, it didn't know if it was 3 parts. So sorry for asking you to elaborate on it, buddy.
At Capacity, can you slam a tornado? Can you dry up a sea?
I can do both those things. Can Matt Hardy?
Big Money Matthews can.
Oh, Big Money Matthews can. And again, Matt Hardy, if you somehow find this podcast out there, I'm laying down the challenge. I'm going crazy. If you want to do this, you are more than welcome to hit my Twitter up, message me. I don't care what the side things are. We can talk details. We can set up the payments or whatever.
That's right.
But the reason I'm laying down this challenge is not because I want to win that trademark from you, Big Money Matt. I don't care about the Big Money trademark. I've dropped that a year ago. I want this because you cut one of the most convincing promos of your career, Matt. I want this match not for trademarks and legal fees and all of that crap that big money people would talk about. I want this match because we went through a global pandemic in 2020. There's a lot of things that this business could evolve in, and e-fetting is one of those things. Some of these wrestlers that are sitting at home and not doing anything could probably pick up a keyboard and type a 10 times more convincing promo than Darren Zion could in any given day. I know you've got the talent. I know you've got the career. I know that this is a big shot in the dark. But the reason I'm challenging you is because I think it could transcend anything that you've ever done in your career. You've done a lot of different things that are great for this business. But if you crossed over to the e-fetting world, if you get your feet dirty in HOW, guess what? You have just brought the wrestling world closer to the fans than it's ever been. And you would be a pioneer in that. It could cause e-feds to transform for years and bring in bigger talents and spend the money if they want to. It may not be every e-fed, but guess what? It's HOW that I want to challenge you for. And I don't care if I haven't talked to Lee. I don't care if I'm breaking the fourth wall. I don't care if all that things happen. Guess what, Matt? I choose you, and I'm going to fight you if I can figure it out and figure out the schematics, because I want something that's good for these fans and brings in a lot of joy for everybody. You can come on the Twitch. I'll figure out how to pay you even. I don't care. We can talk those details out. Guess what? I just want to do it for fun.
Yes, Matt Hardy, known eFed podcast listener. The challenge has been laid down.
Yes. And again, I know a lot of people are going, LOL, Zion being stupid. You know what? I decided.
No, it's fun, man.
Let's have fun. Let's break that fourth wall. Let's do it. Because if it got broken, it would break Twitter. Matt
Hardy, brother, if you can hear the sound of our voice, the challenge has been laid down. High Octane Wrestling at HOWrestling.com.
And again, this is not a Lee Best approved thing. Lee, you listen to this?
Don't
fire me.
I'm sure Lee would allow Matt Hardy to join the Fed.
Again, you don't have to afford anything. This would be my gift to you for allowing me to spout my shit for years. Because your Twitch viewers would go up.
Speaking of spouting shit for years, call-in's up next. The Ocho. Do I need to call Matt Hardy's fleet of lawyers? Perfect timing.
Yes, he should bring in the lawyers. Call Matt Hardy's lawyers, because we're not fighting over big money. We're wanting to talk to his lawyers about some money to figure out how to make this thing work.
I love it. I'm ready to see it. Finally, we got Meg. What do you like about being a ring announcer?
Fun fact, and I'll tell the story about how I got into ring announcing right here. I got into ring announcing because I wanted to be a professional wrestling manager. I have a good buddy that I used to work with that I didn't know was a professional wrestler until I found out after he worked at Cox. Oops, don't put that on there.
Cut that, Brian.
Sorry, Brian. I'm giving you lots of things to cut. I'm using shoot names and everything in between stuff. My bad. Anywho, so as I'm working with this buddy in the call center world that I'm working in. I found out that he's a professional wrestler. I'm like, what the heck? He's this guy that is and again, this is going to get some people because again, I'm in Kansas and they're out in the rest of the world that's a little bit more woken than I am. He's like this blue collar American boy that's a Trump supporter, but he's a heel. He knows his audience. That's the funny part about his character. And I'm just building him up. I'm building him up because I love the guy. He's a good guy to work with. And I'm just building it up. And one day, somebody from the company Prairie Championship Wrestling contacts me and is like, dude, do you want to ring announce? And I'm like, why would I say no to this? This has like been my dream. My dream is to be in the actual professional wrestling business. So I say yes. Little did I know it was going to become a permanent gig. They would ask me for a temporary gig, and I'm like, sure, I'll give it a shot. I want to show that I want to be a part of this business in some aspect. Maybe I'll get my managing gig. Well, I'm starting to ask all the boys on there, and they're like, managers take bumps. And I'm like, well, I ain't going to work. I got in a car wreck a few years ago. I'm going to hurt my back if I do that. Oh. That's like the stupidest thing to do. So I'm like, let's just do ring announcing and have fun with it. And what was funny is they didn't expect me to do so well with it. They didn't know that I'd had like 15 years of watching people like Justin Roberts, Howard Finkel, and all those talents out there. And I actually emulate a lot of Justin Roberts and Howard Finkel. Those are the two people that I would say, as a ring announcer, are the top echelon.
Oh, of course. Hit me with your Howard Finkel impression.
I can't do Howard Finkel because my voice needs to hit down like 20 different octaves. But I actually also do Bruce Buffer. I don't do Let's Get Ready to Rumble because, like, if I say that crap, I'm getting hit with a copyright. I'm like, no, I ain't going to do it. So I go, let's take this to the next level. And it starts out like quiet like that. And then it's like, let's take this to the next level.
There you go.
The main event stuff. So that's like the fun part of it. I love hyping the crowd up. And usually when I hype the crowd up, I'm hyping myself up. So there's this guy by the name of King Vale. And the reason I mention his name, a lot of people might not know him, but I would say he's a future Kansas prospect that you're going to learn about in the next 5 to 10 years. This dude, you wouldn't have suspected could hold this king gimmick. He's very humble, very wise, very, like, he's the guy who shakes hands. I ask him for stuff, and he's like, why are you asking me for stuff? You should, you come up with it for me. I'll just do whatever. Dude has the right attitude in the business. Dude shakes everybody's hands. He's helping tear down, set up the ring. And the reason I mention this guy got recognized by Sonny Ono. A lot of you who don't know Sonny Ono out there that might have gotten into wrestling after the WCW folded. Sonny Ono was a manager in WCW, and he has a lot of connections with All Japan Pro Wrestling and Japan One, I think it's what it's called, or Pro Wrestling One, I can't remember. And King Vale is somebody that got a contract to do like a summer internship program over there, and dude made us proud. And that's like the biggest accomplishment for Kansas, because you don't think of Kansas as being a pro wrestling destination. And that's what I've been wanting to do with this whole thing. I want to put Kansas on the map because there's a lot of history out here that I didn't even know about. I've met a couple people who've kept track of records and stuff, and I'm just like, holy crap, am I privileged right now.
That's awesome. It's cool that you can not only get to live the dream, but learn about the history at the same time.
Yeah, like I learned that NWA had some territories out here. I learned that they kind of died off when WWE took over everything. But afterwards, this guy that knows the Nasty Boys, which I won't throw his name out there. I'm not necessarily looking to dog the guy. I haven't met him. I haven't gotten to build the relationship, but there's a lot of talent out here that's burned by him, and he's like tried to cutthroat. And like, if you think that the Efed business is cutthroat, you work in the professional wrestling business for like 1 hour, and that is the most cutthroat industry you could ever deal with. Like, here's the story I have out of this. Not going to name names, not going to name promotions, because I may share this link with some people in my Kansas wrestling group. But this dude basically copyrighted one of our territory's names at one point because he felt threatened by us. And I'm just like, what? This happens? Like, imagine if Efeding did that. That would be terrible.
That would be terrible.
Yeah. So the fun thing about it is Efeding is like, marbles compared to the real business.
Yeah. It's they're both full of drama, just different levels. I guess it depends on how much you let yourself get involved. Yeah, but that's what
people's livelihoods down in wrestling.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, like that's people's livelihoods there. But yeah, I do have a lot of fun with pro wrestling, doing indie stuff. One of the things I get burnt out by watching the WWE product is their stuff is not believable anymore.
That's the truth.
They're too much scripted stuff, and I get why they have to do it. I understand they have a lot of corporate sponsors. I work the entertainment industry in an aspect that we would cut it, Brian, kind of thing, when we already talked about earlier. Doing data analytics for that industry, yeah, advertisers do not like some of those indie feds that have blood and guts and everything like that. So I understand why WWE does what they do. WWE's gotta keep their T's crossed and their I's dotted. So I understand why they have to do it. I don't have to like it, but I can understand why they do it in a business aspect.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, they want to make money. They want to have sponsors make the most money. But
yeah.
And at the same time, they have to produce a product that's safe for everybody. So I get it, too.
Yeah.
So finally from Megan, what is some advice you would give to an up-and-coming Efeder?
I'll do it in a two-part thing. I know it's more meant for an Efeding question, but I want to talk about what some of the best advice I would say to get into the real wrestling world, too, because I think it would be the best advice for both. So starting with Efeding, I think the best advice that I could ever give an e-wrestler is don't be afraid to fail. The reason I mention that being the best advice I could give you, a lot of times you want to seem like you have everything together. Human nature is you want to be strong, you want to be tough, you want to seem like you're like the most creative person ever, and is just be yourself. Don't be afraid to fail. Like, the best content comes from when you're writing it from the heart. If you're not writing it from the heart, go ahead.
No, I was just saying the same thing goes with life. Don't be afraid to fail. Take those risks. Take the chance.
Yeah, because if you bet on yourself, you're gonna do wonders. And if you fail, then you find out, hey, I learned something from the failure and do something else. Maybe you're not meant to be a role player. Maybe you're meant to write matches. Maybe you're meant to staff a Fed. Maybe you're meant to run a Fed. Everybody has different talents in this industry, both e-Feding and wrestling. Don't be afraid to try something new. If you're not doing really well in RPing, don't be afraid to write a match. Don't be afraid to serve and help your Fed out, because you might find out that you have a different kind of talent that could help your Fed head, or you might help offset some of those talents that are really angry, and you might be able to create a developmental Fed, a second brand. However your Fed is meant to be set up, you might be able to lead that. And that was one of the things I've learned. I may not necessarily be the best Fed head ever. I can help Fed and book a card if need be. I might suck at it because there's all kinds of intricacies. If you learn how the main booker books, then you can book like them. But you can also learn how to book and take your own style and adjust things. Like, I've even learned how to book in the real wrestling thing. I've thrown out ideas. I've learned that they don't necessarily work the same way that you would think in the real life. But just taking those risks and learning what you enjoy in this business, there's so many opportunities in the EFED world. don't be afraid to get started in it as a role player, but talk to your Fed head and go, hey, maybe I want to match right. Maybe I want to book the card. Maybe I want to, ask what you are good at. You might just be a good website developer. And look at what Mikey's done with his career. He is not only like one of the best role players out there. Mikey found a talent in doing a podcast that Fedders can find different feds to go to, whether it's angle feds, role play feds, whatever. That's a talent in and of itself. Plus, he has an Efed merchandise store. I love the .com references you and Brian love doing.
Yeah, EfedTees.com.
.com. Sorry, Brian. Had to steal your thunder there. But there's a lot of different things that there are opportunities out there for. Don't be afraid to get your feet wet. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And most importantly, kind of tying back to the Hollywood Hudson joke, don't be afraid to look stupid.
No, you're exactly right. When I started the podcast, I thought it would be me and 5 friends, and it's turned into a big deal. And I appreciate every person who takes time to listen. So all you have to do is just put yourself out there and see what happens.
Oh, absolutely. The best thing I can tell you to do in wrestling wise is if you have a local Fed near you, get involved. Don't be afraid. Again, that ties back to the original advice to take those risks. But for me, how it ended up happening is I'm trolling a bunch of wrestlers, hyping up 3 other wrestlers that are a stable, and I ended up with a ring announcing gig. Don't be afraid to get your feet wet. Like, throw out trash talk like you're playing the Efed game with them. You might find yourself with a real wrestling job, surprisingly. Or if you're not wanting to get into ring announcing and do something like Ben Halcomb does, like refereeing or get into managing your stuff, don't be afraid to take that money and invest in a promotion. There's a lot of good promotions out there that will take you under. I know OVW has some good programs out there. I know if you want to move to Kansas, the KWA, and one of my good friends, he is a great trainer. He works all the people in Salina. He molds them. And right now, his biggest claim to success is getting somebody in Japan right now. There's a lot of people working with there's a referee that I know of, too, that's working with Evolve Wrestling. So we have somebody that's on the cusp of potentially getting into NXT and WWE. So that's, like, exciting to me. I want those talents to succeed. There's all kinds of opportunities in your area. Don't be afraid to look it up. Don't be afraid to see if there's a wrestling school that might be an hour away, 2 hours away. Find the time to invest in it. Invest in yourself. That's the best life advice I could give you to get into the game. And even if you don't last in pro wrestling, if you're not meant to be a wrestler, again, keep trying different things. Ask them, hey, can I keep setting up the ring until a ring announcing gig comes up? Hey, can you tell me where there's a ring announcing gig? Or can I do broadcast? Can I do this? Can I do that? What could I do to get involved? And it's the most rewarding experience I've ever done. I didn't think I'd get into indie wrestling because sometimes I love WWE too much for my own good. But having that moment to reset myself and just allow myself to be a fan instead of just like this smart mark behind a keyboard that's like, oh, look at Kurt Angle's matches. They're so great. I would much rather enjoy this big, bulky behemoth that has the world title beat the crap out of the snotty, bratty heel king in Kansas any day of the week than watch Drew McIntyre kick the snot out of Randy Orton 15 different times on Raw every Monday night.
It's different live.
Yes.
Yep. So get into your local wrestling, get involved, make sure you buy tickets, do all the things you can do to support your local wrestling.
Even if you can't buy tickets, don't be afraid to be a street crew. Don't be afraid to not only just be a fan, don't just support your local wrestlers because you never know when they'll hit it big. And maybe if they hit it big, you might find yourself maybe not necessarily with a WWE job, but you might find yourself being front row at WrestleMania.
There you go.
Surprisingly. I haven't gotten that experience yet. Knocking on wood right now. I hope I do get that experience someday. I hope that I have an impact on my boys that and gals, because there's a lot of good female wrestlers out here that do a great job too. I shouldn't forget that, but there's a lot of great talent out in Kansas that maybe I hope one day, not only do we get our recognition back as Kansas being like a top wrestling group, maybe, just maybe, I build the next WWE superstar. Maybe I build an AEW superstar. Maybe somebody goes to Impact. And I have heard stories of people talking to Impact, and I won't name their names because I do play Among Us with them. But, you know, those are the kinds of stories, like, as a ring announcer in a small town Fed, if I hit big in WWE, great. That's like the dream. Will I hit it? Probably not. There's so many ring announcers that are much better than me that would kill to have that position. I would much rather build the smaller territories and have that be my story than be in the juggernaut.
It makes sense. I mean, hey, have fun and, like they say, support local wrestling.
Absolutely.
So, Darin, thank you so much for taking the time to do the interview, buddy. That's all I got for you.
Man, this is a fun experience. If you are on the fence about doing it, I would say do it. Mikey is a great guy.
Thanks, buddy.
Doing a great job of bringing a lot of that anxiety-filled, crazy dude that's on Twitter and bringing it into focus and getting me to share my story.
Well, it is a lot of fun, and I appreciate you taking the time. Before I let you go, is there anything else you want to plug, promote, put over?
Number one, always check out HoWrestling.com.
Yes.
I always like to make that joke.
HOWrestling.com.
Oh, come on. Even Scotty Woods says Ho Wrestling. That's funny as shit. It's HOWrestling.com because, yeah, it's a good website. Lee puts a lot of time into it. Lee, if you're listening, thank you for all the support and love over the years when people don't give it to me. I know there's a lot of times where you ban me from the Discord and it's all good jest and everything, but I appreciate the fact that you take the chance on me, even though there's a lot of times you're probably banging your head against the wall going, why the hell did I ever hire this guy? I also would like to thank JD and MVW. I think you said at MVW Heartland.
Yes.
Is their Twitter handle. I am still terrible at it. I look and use this Twitter search feature. I'm lazy. But I always got to plug JD. JD is a great guy. He does a fantastic job at not only doing promotion for HOW and other EFEDs, he does a good job at writing. Like, if you're looking for a really good old school Fed, I know a lot of times that JD is a one-man band, but he really loves it when you approach him to do stuff. I know Scott Stevens is over there right now. I know Eric Dane at one point was running a character out of MVW. I don't know if he's doing a lot of that now. I know I've done it. Brian Hogwood's even done it for a little bit, like one show he allowed him to use. But, dude, like, JD is like one of the coolest guys I've ever met. He's a great Fed head, too. He may be a one-man show, but it's always fun to have two people, you know, plugging away, having idea fests and talking it out. If you're looking to really kind of get your feet wet in the angle Fed, definitely check them out. Always got to plug Defiance, even though HOW says fuck Defiance. I've heard a lot of good things about you guys. I know I haven't joined it yet, but I'm going to get my application done after I finish my WWH one tonight. And I'll plug them too, even though I may be just over there in Defiance and WWH for a couple of appearances. I got to plug Prairie Championship Wrestling. I can't remember what website we're on, but if you go to Facebook and look us up, you'll see a lot of me and my 309 pound fat ass doing ring announcing here and there pre-pandemic. They're good people. Kansas Wrestling Alliance, XWE out of Salina, Kansas. I got a lot of lists of different promotion stuff, but, you know, check out Kansas Wrestling when you get a chance. That'd be my last plug, really.
There you have it. Guys, you can find him on Twitter.
Now at Darin A. Matthews. I may be changing it to Darin M. Zion or something to that effect. But, yeah, you can always find me on Twitter. I don't know my Discord. Just hit me up on Twitter and I'll give it to you somehow.
You can find him on Twitter at Darin A. Matthews. You can find him in HO Wrestling. And you can find him at MVW Heartland on Twitter. Guys, that's all time we got with Darin today. Darin, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you, Mikey.
2, that was a lot of fun talking to Darin. Really enjoyed interviewing him, talking about his time as a ring announcer, talking about Matthew Hardy and Big Money Matt out there laying the challenge down. Zion here on the show, Brian, challenges Matt Hardy to an e-wrestling match. What are your thoughts?
Man, Matt Hardy's ideas are terrible. He'd fit in perfect in this hobby.
It's never going to happen, though, right?
No, there's no way.
No way. But yeah, I'm glad Darin joined us for the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. I had a blast talking to him. We're going to go ahead and head on out of here. The episode 64 of the Efed podcast. I want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring the show, making sure you check out their feds, check out their products, check out their communities. Guys, these guys are the people who support us each and every week. We really appreciate it. Also, check out EWTs.com. Check out DefianceWrestling.com. And check out EFedPodcast.com while you're at it. Oh, and finally, Patreon.com/EFedPodcast.
.com/EFedPodcast.
And that's where you can help support the show. We would greatly appreciate it. And get involved in the backstage stuff, get the ad-free early episodes, and much more.
100%.
So, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Efed Podcast, episode 64. For Brian, I'm Mikey. Thanks for listening, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
Been listening to the Efed podcast only on the Atomic Jobcast Network, presented commercial free on Patreon.